Video lesson 3.5. Welcome. Today we will be discussing estimated moving averages. Now, these are completely optional, and before going any further, I would like to just address a few things. Number one, indicators are not necessary. I myself do not use indicators. These are just for beginner purposes, and they do help when going against the trend to basically find a spot, kind of the sweet spot when going against the trend. But other than that, they really are not necessary. Price is really the only necessary tool that we will be using. The indicators are they're there as like training wheels on a bike, for example. Number two, I would like to address something that I did not have time to talk about in the previous video. The M and W reversal patterns. Now, the M and W reversal patterns we are going to be using as our main. This is our main setup. I don't advise you to take any other setups other than the M or W second leg at the high or the low of the day. And basically all the previous lessons except for the M and W reversal fractal patterns, that was the previous lesson 3.4. All of the previous ones except 3.4 were basically just examples building up to lesson 3.4. They were all examples of fractals within the main structure. And I want to take basically 90%, I want you to take 90% of your time to dedicate on only catching second leg M and W trades until you have developed an understanding of when and how they tend to occur. They are patterns themselves, and once you understand these patterns, you'll be able to obtain optimal entry trades. After 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, for some people it's more, 2 months, you will be able to catch trades with very little drawdown, 0 drawdown if that. And once you're at that point, then you can move to the next level. So you have to take it step by step. And I have done my best to structurize this course in a fluid step-by-step manner. But if you don't take your own time to learn these methods in a step-by-step manner that works for you, in other words, if you just rush through this and then try and trade everything that I've explained in here without going step by step and taking the time that it takes to learn these, that it takes, go over each video lesson, because there are things that you you realize in each video lesson, and then you go and test them out and they work great, but you left out certain things in that video lesson that when you go back to, you realize, wow, I was so consumed about this aspect of the video that I completely forgot about this. For example, I realize, now I can get trades with zero drawdown, but I'm holding for 100 pips profit when I'm going against the trend, and then at 30 pips, it reverses and hits my stop loss at break even, or hits my stop loss at 10 pips, 20 pips. It's just that you have to realize that, we say, everything I say has a certain level of detail to it, and I say it for a reason. I have points. Each point that I mention in these videos has depth to it, and you have to really take each point seriously. So don't just consume yourself with one aspect of the video lesson. Like if you just take every M and W, for example, every M and W that you see, you're going to get burned, because the M and Ws that we trade, that I trade, are at the high and the low of the day. If you're trading M and Ws in the middle of the day at Asian session, in the middle of Asian session, you're normally not going to get an optimal trade idea or play out. So learn these methods in a step-by-step manner. You will surely get lost if you do not do that. So if you don't do this in a step-by-step manner, if you don't, work on yourself, because this is just an outside reflection of how you see yourself. And if you can't even see yourself gaining 100 pips in a session, then how are you supposed to gain 100 pips? Like, this is what I'm trying to convey to you guys, that it's possible to gain 50 to 100 pips in 1 to 3 hours. And although mainstream says it's impossible to have risk-reward ratios of 1 to 10, 1 to 20, it's discussed in mainstream. 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5 is something amazing by mainstream retail. But 1 to 20, you start talking about 1 to 20, you're a conspiracy theorist. You're crazy, right? You're talking out of your butt, right? So, video lesson 3.5. That's basically what I wanted to go over, is that you guys have to really work on this yourselves just as much time as I've put into these video lessons. You have to put as much time and more into putting this everything to work. So putting all this content to work. So moving on to video lesson 3.5, the estimated moving averages. Once again, these are optional, and they are for, beginner traders. I do not use any indicators really that much at all. But for right now, this is for the beginners and for anyone that wants to use them, because they are helpful tools, but they are only tools. So the first moving average, estimated moving average, is the 50. This is the blue moving average. This is going to be our first take profit when going against the trend. So let's say, for example, we saw this M formation at the high. We took a sell right here. We would have taken profit right here. That's our first take profit. Now that's pretty lousy because, it's going against the trend. It's not many pips. About 18, 20 pips. It's alright. Usually it's about 30 pips. Usually optimal trading is about 30 to 50 pips. The blue, 30 pips. The white, 50 pips. So, for example, this one, if you took the M formation here, I don't even know if this is going against the trend or not, but this is 20 pips. I'm pretty sure it's going against the trend. It looks like it. A 20 pip spike to the low, or I should say spike to the blue EMA, and then the white is 50 pips, just about. So it's normally 30 to 50 pips in that range when going against the trend. So 50 EMA blue, first take profit against the trend. 200 EMA white is the second take profit when going against the trend. Now remember, guys, these are just averages in price. Price is moving itself, and then the indicators are updating based on fractions and past movements and past averages being played out, and that's why these lines are appearing where they're appearing. So I don't want to go real in depth with you guys on the EMAs because it'll get you confused right now, but just understand the characteristics of them. So and before I go any further, after discussing our next 800 EMA, I will be explaining how to get them on your charts, because I'm sure there are a few people that do not understand how I obtained these bad boys. So the 800 EMA is an extreme. It is the reversal or reset zone. So for example, when price gets to the 800 moving average, if it breaks below the 800 moving average, and this is we're going with the trend here, but the EMA, if it crosses, it would be, if price crosses and then continues down without making an W formation, if it crosses through the EMA, slashes through it like that, then we would expect a change in the trend. I'll explain everything else here that I have shortly. But yeah, basically the 800 EMA as well, if there is a W formation on the 800 EMA that represents a reset in the trend. So you can see it was downtrending. It hit that 800 moving average, estimated moving average, and then created that perfect W formation. Looks like our signature trade breakout right there. And then reset the trend continuing in the direction. So 800 moving average. We'll go a little bit more in depth on that shortly, but let me show you guys how to set these up. This is how I look at my charts. Zero indicators whatsoever. Price shows what it's going to do itself. You don't really need any indicators. In my mind, you are working yourself more by trying to determine price and an indicator. You know, it's like taking your focus and dividing it, and I think that's the whole purpose of indicators. But anyways, for some people, you know, indicators are the holy grail and they really need them. So EMA, type it in, click indicators, type in EMA, and then what we will be using is moving average exponential. Press this 1, 2, 3 times. Now, what we're going to be doing is clicking one by one on here. The first one will be blue. It is the 50. The second one will be white. It is the 200. And then the last one is the purple, the extreme 800. So, on to the main characteristics of how these EMAs are structured and how, when they're structured in a certain pattern or a certain, I guess, structure, they represent something. So, for example, when all the EMAs are close together, EMAs close together, when they're all bunched together like this, and price is in a state of consolidation, and yeah, you can see the consolidation there. This is a terrible box. But yeah, the consolidation, you can see it, and then you can also see the EMAs 800, the 50, and the 200. What you can also see is kind of the spring, the wedge pattern. Expect the breakout. What do we expect when the EMAs come close together? We expect a breakout. Always expect a breakout or a large movement. So, another example, the EMAs come very close together. They're consolidating here, and then price comes, makes that W formation. And you can see here, the W is at the low of this day. It is at, price changeover is here. This W was formed at the exact low and on the 800 moving average, the extreme. So what happened afterwards? After it broke out, we had a 70 pip move to the upside. If you caught it at the 800, you had a 100 pip ride, basically 92 pip ride to the upside. So EMAs spread. When the EMAs spread out, you can also see that once they can be bunched together, and then at breakout they spread out. The spreading out represents the trend, a trending environment. Basically, you can see they spread out very violently when the trend is very volatile. So once again, EMAs were close together. That breakout, upon that breakout, the EMAs started to spread out, and then it continued. The trend continued in that upward direction. So the next one, our next characteristic, and if you guys would like to write these down as well, feel free to write them down. Write everything down, take notes on everything that you can. If you're not doing that already, shame on you. You should be. I shouldn't have to tell you that you should do that. You should definitely take notes. That definitely helps wire it into your brain. So here's a M formation that happened above all EMAs at the high of the day as well. Now when this happens above all the EMAs, or a W formation like we talked about previously, the M formation above all EMAs, that is a confirmation that price will reset or continue in its downtrending movement. So here we see a large downtrend in the Euro USD, but in the downtrend we're obviously going to have retracements, right? So we see this retracement, and then price meets the 800 moving average and forms that M formation on the 800. Correct? That represents a reset in the initial downtrend. And you can see once that reset happens, the EMAs spread out. This is just understanding the estimated moving averages, you guys. So this will help you as beginners to have a greater understanding of how price moves. And although I don't use them, like I said, they are quite useful for beginners. Now, that was basically the entire lesson. There really isn't much else to talk about on the EMAs. That's really all I use them for. They're really just useful for when going against the trend, and that's really why I stopped using them. Except for the 800 moving average. That is a more useful moving average for when going with the trend, but when going against the trend, using the 50 and the 200 are very helpful for the take profit zones and understanding when to take profit. So with that being said, thank you guys for joining us. Another video lesson 3.5 done. Until the next one, 3.6 coming up next. Thank you once again. Peace out.